Hi, I'm Paul Duchesne. Welcome to Mama Paul in the Kitchen. Today is Tuesday, January the 26th, 2021. This is the third show in the series we've been doing about food, and we started off talking about food combining and Ayurvedics. And in the context of that, we're going to finish this little series by doing a fruit salad today. So I started off with a topping that I put on my green salad. And then last week I put the greens together and I put the hard vegetables together, put the topping on them and presented you with the salad. Today we're going to step back and go to the first meal of the day, the recommended first meal of the day, which is the fruit salad. Before we get too far there, I just wanted to talk about a little bit. On the side here I got this book, Eat Right for Your Life. And this is a book that I've never taken that seriously, but I dug it out as we're doing the show right now, and I thought I'd look into some of the literature I had around. And what this book does is it breaks down people into 4 different types depending on your blood type. Well, if I listen to this, if I follow this, what they're saying is I should be eating more protein and less carbohydrates. And I might experiment with this some because I really like carbohydrates, and generally I feel like I do well with them. But maybe not. Maybe I don't do as well as I thought I would do without them. So it sort of nailed me on a few things in here, and I presented this to somebody else just a few hours ago, and it rang true for them also. So a lot of these things will, ring true for you on a certain level. So that was eat right for your type. That was the four types. In Ayurvedics, we have the 3 types. We've got the Pitta, the Kapha, and the Vata. And I recommend that if you're interested, go Google it. Find one of the websites that you can take a little test and find out what type you are. And then if you're interested, you can read some more about your type. So for me, I'm a Pitta. Pitta seems to be sort of in the middle. The Vata appears to be the really sort of emaciated thin person. And the Kapha is the not so thin person. And the Pitta seem to be sort of in the middle, which is where I seem to be, right in the middle of the road. And was it Jim Hightower said the only thing in the middle of the road are dead armadillos? I think that was the title of one of his books. So much for in the middle of the road. So I started off with macrobiotic diet for a long period of time. And the reason I got into it because I had an ulcer. Most people I've discovered and talked to over the years worked their way into a health store because of some physical ailment they had. So that's what started me on the health food, was the ulcer, got me into the macrobiotics. I cured the ulcer in a matter of hours, literally, of starting this diet. Over time, it was time to move off it. If you take some of these a little bit too seriously, you can sort of get a little bit neurotic about the whole thing, which is why I frequently refer to macrobiotics as macroneurotics. It was the launching of people in the health food industry to cook. It really was. There was the Moosewood cookbook and a few other cookbooks, but it was the macrobiotic people who really grabbed onto the cooking and taught people how to cook well. And that's one of the big positive things from the macrobiotic movement. Years later, the macrobiotics didn't eat anything raw at all. So then there's the whole raw food group of people. And you encounter them, if you did a little fasting in between, you start to encounter the raw food people. Well, they're just eating all raw food. Now, they do okay in the South or in Northern California in the summer, but when the rainy season starts and it starts to get cold, if you're just eating raw food, forget about it. Forget about it. It's not gonna happen. Years ago, there were a lot of raw food people would be in the Bay Area all summer long, and as soon as late September came, boom, they're out of here and on their way to Hawaii. The few that stayed would be going to extremes, drinking things like seaweed soups and stuff to try to keep some heat in their body. So one extreme and the other extreme. And let's look at my own development, as the one extreme was sort of the theses that started me, and the raw food was sort of the antithesis of that. Thesis, antithesis. Well, the new synthesis is what I call the NewMe Diet, the NewMe Diet. It's the New Me Diet. And I've incorporated the macros, I've incorporated the raw food, and I've integrated that with Ayurvedics, food combining, a couple of the things along the way. Last week, I mentioned the top diet of the year, and there was an article about how the Mediterranean diet was the top diet for last year. Well, in the, I'll just show you the magazine it came out of. There's these little handouts that you get in the health food store every week. And this particular one, pretty much what they are they're advertisements for a lot of supplements. I hardly take any supplement. I take hardly any supplements. But most of these magazines are mostly advertised for supplements, and they're forced to put some articles in here about food, real food, because nobody's going to pick it up and read it if it's just about supplements. So in here they have what they say is the top 3 diets for 2021, and what do they lead with? The quick over here again, the Mediterranean diet, right over here, Mediterranean diet, and they've got 2 more under it. The Mediterranean diet, as they define it here, and who can argue with this? Nobody. Nobody can argue with this. It makes just too much sense. Whole grains, fruits, vegetables, beans, herbs, spices, nuts, and healthy fats such as olive oil. Fish and seafood twice a week. Moderate portions of dairy food, eggs, occasional poultry, and infrequent servings of red meat and sweets. I don't do well with that one. The plan calls for drinking lots of water. I drink lots of tea. Being active, I'm active sometimes just standing still. And if you like a little red wine in moderation, I don't do well with red wine, but a gin I do better with. That sort of sounds a little ridiculous, but it's true. The DASH eating plan, I mentioned that last week. It was listed as these top diets in the newspaper article, and I said I'd never heard of the DASH diet. Well, what DASH stands for, D-A-S-H, is Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. It's basically a Mediterranean diet that they've trimmed into something that the Weight Watching crowd likes, a 2,000 calorie per day diet. So they made it 2,000 calories a day out of it. Counting calories is just not in my thinking at all. It doesn't make sense to me, counting calories. It doesn't make sense to me adding up minutia of the vitamins and minerals you're taking every day. For me, the idea is to get a good mix of vegetables and fruits, and seasonally, color-wise, mix it up, get a lot of stuff in there, use a lot of herbs, focus on some healing types of herbs and things. We'll get more into them as we go along. The other one they said was the anti-stress diet, and it's got more fiber in it and more oils in it, and I don't know exactly where they're going with this one either. I'll let that go aside. The other magazine also had, and this was, let's go back there a second, and this was another magazine called Delicious Living, and Delicious Living mentioned the couple of diets, also the Mediterranean diet they had as number 2, and they opened up with the paleo or caveman diet. When I read this, I was sort of hysterical a little bit. When I first got into macrobiotics, I was doing this macrobiotic, a lot of rice, 50, 60, 70% of your diet were carbohydrates. And then the vegetables, and no raw, and the only fruits were dried. Fruits were always dried, so you got a little bit constricted, to say the least. Well, a friend of mine down the hill, for some reason or another, and this is, I'm talking a long time ago, this is before there was such a thing as the paleo diet. For some reason, he started doing hamburgers every day. Literally, that's all he was eating. He was eating meat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And at the end of about 3 weeks, he started to turn into this raving, really angry guy. And you could really see the effects of food on people. He noted it himself, and then he stopped it and went back to eating more normally. I'll throw one chart up here. I talked about the Ayurvedic diet and the food combining. Now, the food combining, I've also talked about the controversies around it. Having said that it's controversial, which it is, I still think it's worthwhile looking at and being aware of and finding out what in there works for you. If you look at this chart, I don't know if you can see it too well, but in the middle, the big box on my left is green, non-starchy vegetables. And the arrows between them point to how you can and can't combine things. So you'll notice the starches are down below the green vegetables, the proteins are above it, and you can do the vegetables with either of them. Then on the far right, the three boxes, they've got the sweet fruits, the subacid fruits, and the acid fruits. Below that, the fats and oils. And the melons are in a category by themselves. Now, for me, the melons in a category, but I can hardly do these melons. I eat these melons and boom, I am definitely by themselves. Watermelon maybe I can do in the summertime. The sweet fruits I don't even do that well with, such as bananas and figs. I don't do well with. The acid fruits I don't do well with, but I like. And oranges, when I was a kid, I think I ate over a dozen oranges in a sitting once, and I think it burnt the lining of my stomach, and I think I've had a negative effect from that for almost my whole life. So the subacid fruits, the apples, the berries, these are the biggest things that I do really well with. The fruits themselves, when you're eating a fruit salad in the morning, the enzymes that are in uncooked foods are enough to help you digest the food more easily. A lot of people go and buy digestive enzymes. They buy digestive enzymes to help them digest the proteins and the carbohydrates, the cooked foods that don't have enzymes in them. They don't because they've been cooked out of them. The enzymes cook out. The minerals, the vitamins, they all stay in to various degrees. But the enzymes are gone. So the raw food in the form of the fruit and in the salads are loaded with enzymes. So you don't need to take enzymatic supplements if you eat properly. So a couple of other systems would talk about chewing. Chewing was a big thing, proper chewing. Now, every book you pick and read here about dietary recommendations, they're going to tell you to chew your food properly. Well, I mentioned the macrobiotic diet earlier, and they get a little bit neurotic at a certain point. Well, they were so into chewing. The party line was 100 chews per bite. You're going to be bored to death with living if you start to chew 100 chews per bite. I actually had dinner with somebody one night. I cooked this really great dinner. It was just the two of us having dinner together. And they sat there, and they were heavily macrobiotic. And they sat there chewing and chewing and chewing. I mean, I was done with the meal and sitting there smoking my nice macrobiotic cigarette. This was when we all used to smoke back in the 80s. The macros were notorious smokers. I was on dessert and they were still eating their meal. I mean, it was the most ridiculous, antisocial thing to do. So they might have had the best digestion in the world and the best enzymes getting produced by the saliva in their mouth, but I think if they threw a little salad in there, it would have been a lot better. Let's put it that way. All right, let's move on to I think we're going to move on to the fruit now and get to the point of this whole thing here. Okay, so I said I was going to make a little fruit salad. So let me get the paperwork off here, put the tech team on the corner, and let's get out some of the fruits. Well, let's get the big screen, get a bigger screen too. Okay, so what I like for fruit is berries, grapes, apples, pears, and the one fruit that really isn't terribly good for me, pomegranates. And the reason I like, well, I'll buy things that are just seasonal, that are bearable and seasonal, and pomegranates are sort of like that. I don't use a lot of them. I'll use maybe an eighth of this, and it, you know, I'll show you something. You want to see something about food? Some people would walk around a health food store carrying a pendulum. They carry a pendulum with them. A pendulum can be, it doesn't have to be a crystal, it doesn't have to be metal, it can be, but it needs to be free swinging. So what we've got right now is this little pendulum that I've made, and it's free swinging. You don't see my fingers are moving at all. It's free swinging over this piece of fruit here. So what it's doing, it's going back and forth right now, and it's getting a little bit of information. Now what's going to happen is after it gets a little bit of information, it's going to it's running the energy in my body through the pendulum to the energy below it. That's what's happening. Now, while I'm talking and doing this, it's not the best way to do it. Now, I did this before the show started, and this was going in a negative swing against, it was swinging in the opposite, back and forth like this, which it's starting to do a little bit, but the fact that I'm not concentrating on it is not making this work any easier. So I may not continue with this. We'll give it a few seconds. All right. Well, there it's going in the opposite. Okay, that's a no. When you work with a pendulum, what you can do with a pendulum is you can hold it over your hand and say, show me a yes, show me a no, and it'll do it. In this case, that's a no. Now, I know that's a no. And let's put it over the raspberries, and we're going to get a, see, the circling is where it's gathering information. And then after it gathers the information, then it'll start to give you an answer. In this case, the pendulum is moving back and forth, forward and back, and this is giving us a positive. So I'm going to pretty much get a positive on this, on the grapes, on the blackberries, apples, all of this, except for the pomegranate. I also don't get a very positive on strawberries, but I'll throw some in now and then. So like I said, I cheat a lot when I'm doing when I do a lot of things, especially with food. I don't follow the rules really strictly. So I'm going to start the salad with grapes. And unfortunately, now grapes, I always wash. I always wash grapes. These are organic, and the only trouble is they weren't seedless. So there's been seedless grapes all year. God, there's been seedless grapes. I love seedless grapes. You wash them, you clean them, boom, you use them. Well, these aren't seedless, but I am going to make them seedless by literally removing the seeds from them. I will literally cut them in half, and let's say we cut maybe half a dozen of them in half, slice them right down on where the little stem was over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I know it's a little trouble with the knife there, and it wasn't that sharp, so maybe I should sharpen it in between. We didn't sharpen it this morning. So the grapes are all cut, and there's 4 little seeds in each one of the grapes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I cut them right down the middle. This might seem, and I'm just going to take a little spoon and just scoop them out. And the reason I'm doing that is if I was just eating the grapes by themselves, and with a little seed in, I would twirl it around and I would spit the seed out. But if I'm mixing the grapes with 3 or 4 other vegetables or 3 other fruits, it becomes a little bit weird trying to spit out all of the seeds, because you have so many other things going on in your mouth at the same time. So I will take the extra few minutes to clean the seeds out of here. Whoops, there's one left. And the funny thing is about the seeds in here is I did this, and I ate my fruit salad this morning, and I thought I had a seed in my mouth, and I didn't. It was the pomegranate, because the pomegranate is also the little seeds. The little seeds. That's what you're eating with the pomegranate. The little seeds in the pomegranate are very hard and brittle and very much like a seed over here. So we're going to get rid of those over here. Boom. All right, so I've got about 7 grapes cut in half, and there's an old wives' tale about dealing with food. When you're dealing with food, you want to deal with everything in odd numbers like 5 and 3, 5, 7. Having said that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to break another rule. Okay, then I'm going to take a few of the blackberries, and I'll get. So I got four of these. 1, 2. Let's go fry. Let's throw 5 blackberries in here, and a couple of raspberries, maybe a little handful of raspberries, 7, 8, 9 raspberries. They're a little smaller than the blackberries. And the apple, I maybe generally use about half an apple at a time, maybe a quarter of an apple. You know, let's do the blade a little bit. It was a little bad before. So, the whetstone, I think we did this last week. I showed you the whetstone, and you lay it on the stone, and you lift it up about 15 to 20% degree angle. Bring it down and to your right, making sort of a J shape out of it. A J shape, like that. All right, we'll do the same thing forward. I don't know if you're supposed to do it that way, but like I said, if somebody's watching this and I'm doing this wrong, make sure you can let me know for sure. I am open to criticism of anything I'm doing wrong or anything I'm mispronouncing. I am not the go-to person for how to pronounce things either. And this was which is why this is here, in case you miss and the blade comes back, this will stop it on the sword. I believe they call this a sword, and this is just used, like I said before, to buff the blade after you've sharpened it. You don't sharpen it, you just buff it up a little bit. And I inherited this from my father a long time ago. Alright, so we'll get rid of the tiny little, God knows that they've been putting these UPC codes on every piece of fruit in the bloody store. That started a while ago. I never understood. I thought that was a little bit of an overkill. So anyway, I came in on I wanted to get rid of the center core where the pits were on the apple, the stems done. Okay, and remember the knuckles are always like that against the blade, so you don't chop your fingers off. So I dice it up into nice little pieces. There we go, and we'll do the same thing with the pear, a D'Anjou pear, organic. I use almost all organic vegetables if I can. Now I said if I can. Now my usual health food store didn't have any organic raspberries the other night, and I wanted to make the salad, and God, you can't make it without raspberries. I mean, just the color alone is enough to force you to put the raspberries into your salad. Like I said, I like to mix a lot of colorful things in when I'm doing this. So, okay, there, boom. Actually, normally I would put this into my composting pail, which is down there, but I didn't have it set up, so we'll just put it in back of us with the garbage at the moment. So same thing with the pear. Slice it down and then dice it up into nice little pieces. Boom, boom. And there we go. Alright, so I have I'm not making this as big as I normally do. Normally I would make this a lot bigger. And I would make it for 3 or 4 days at a time. That's what I make. I usually make it for about 3 days at a time. That's probably 2 days here. But I'm going to add the pomegranate. I'm going to give you a little tip on the pomegranate. There's 2 ways you can get the seeds out of the pomegranate. One, I'm going to do this right now, and I'm just going to take the seeds out. So you sliced off. And you don't want to mix this with anything else when you're taking the seeds out of here, because the little white fleshy parts are going to sort of attach a little bit here and there. Now, this is the way most people will get the seeds out of a pomegranate. The alternative, if you're going to use a lot of pomegranate, say you wanted to make a nice fish sauce, a sauce for fish using pomegranate, which is an excellent sauce. We use it at the restaurant quite a bit in the winter time, especially because the winter is when pomegranates are out. And you're going to if you're going to make a sauce out of it, you're going to wind up clearing off the whole pomegranate. Well, the way you can do a pomegranate is put it under water. Put it under water. So you take a bowl, and use a bigger bowl than this, and you take the pomegranate. You can slice it, say, in half so you can work with it. Put it in the bowl, and then turn the the skin inside out. You'll pop out 90% of these, but there'll be a lot of the white flesh will still be on the seed. Well, what will happen is all that white flesh will float to the top. The seeds will sink to the bottom. You can then skim the white flesh off the top. Boom. The water will be a little bit red because the pomegranates are red. And if you want to drink the water, go right ahead. I wouldn't bother with it. I would just toss it. You're not losing that much. Or you could use it if you're going to make like I said, if you're going to make a sauce, you could use that water as your water base to cook with as you go along. But you put the whole thing in the water and you turn it inside out. The seeds will go to the bottom. The flesh will stay to the top. And I don't know where I picked that one up. It was a couple of years ago. I might have read it in one of these magazines. More than likely I did. All right, so let's put the bowl over here. Now I've added the seeds. Now, so that they're mixing in here. When I pour this out into the bowl, okay, yeah, I've got like 2 days here, two days of salad. What'll happen when you throw this into the bowl is something like a pomegranate seed, or if you had something else in here that was heavy, would go to the bottom. So when you're going to eat this, you want to make sure you mix it up. So I would take this, cover this over for the night, and then tomorrow I would use a smaller bowl, take half of it into the smaller bowl, and then have the other half for tomorrow. Fruit salad, way to start the day, highly recommended. And go for it. It's really easy. It's an easy habit to get into. And one of our subscribers out there, Mark, I believe, has already started having the fruit salad for breakfast to start the day with. And he's noticed an increase in energy and possibly, although he's not exactly an overweight kind of guy, he might lose a few pounds in a week or two. I've noticed this with most people who get into this. Okay, over the next couple of weeks, what we're going to do is I'd like to go onto the stove next week, and if we can figure out how to make the camera work, and do the mock corned beef hash dish I make with buckwheat and potatoes. And I want to get that in soon because the winter is running out, and buckwheat is a winter grain. It heats you up. I also want to make the mushroom Swiss chard dish I make, which I just sort of discovered within the last half year and started experimenting. It's just a terrific little combination. And I also work with little squash. So this is going to be the next couple of weeks. We're going to do those. I've mentioned this brown rice tofu sandwich, which I used to make commercially. People still ask for this thing. It was absolutely delicious and on one level a digestive nightmare, which I didn't realize for about 20 years. And we'll maybe make those. And we can make them so they're not digestive nightmares, or we can keep them the way most people like them. Other than that, we're going to do a little thing about fasting as the spring approaches, and we'll see what else we can come up with. So, see you next week, hopefully, and we're hopefully going to be able to do this every Tuesday. That's my plan, and you know about the best laid plans of mice and men, but peace, patience, and persistence, and I'll see you on campus.